Hi, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. and today I'm reviewing Tapestry, a game by Stonemaier Games. And Tapestry, at its core, is a very simple game. You're ultimately going to, on your turn, either take an income turn, which we'll come back to later, or you'll advance along one of 4 different tracks around the edge of this board. And that's basically the game. Rinse and repeat until you get to the end. Whoever has the most points wins. I'm glad you now basically know exactly how to play this game, sort of. But to be more specific, around the edge of this track, you're going to take one of 4 actions, advancing your cube from one space to the next, taking that action of the track. There's going to be the technology track, which is going to give you science cards, which you can slowly augment up to the board to get different benefits from, as well as giving you other cards and other benefits. And that's something we're going to see in all of these tracks. They all intermingle in different ways. While each track does have a focus, there are tracks that are going to reward you for having gotten that far in that track, and gotten that far in that track, and then built that kind of house over here. They're all going to intermingle and play off each other to a degree. The second track is going to be the exploration track, where you add new tiles to the board, getting various benefits for adding those new tiles, and rinse and repeat until you get to the space transit or whatnot, until you get to space, where you can start getting space tiles with additional bonuses, additional fun things to get. Then there's going to be the science track, which is going to let you go up on all the other tracks. That's going to be the core focus. You're going to roll a science die and then move up along another track depending on what's rolled. So it lets you kind of do its own thing, but then also lets you get progressively more powerful on the other tracks around the board. Then there's going to be the war track, which is going to be the primary way that you actually attack other players, knocking over their various towers and whatnot as you take control of a domain. And this game does have an aspect, the whole Civ thing is a little bit abstracted, and so one of the examples of that is going to be that whenever you take over a territory, that territory can't be conquered again. There's a limit of two towers per territory, and it's going to limit the amount of back and forth combat in this game. And that's basically the main game over here. Along the way, you're going to be taking income turns. Throughout the game, you're going to take 5 income turns that might be at different points than other players. So one player may well be finished the game while someone else is still taking on their income turns and still cascading their benefits and their resources into a better and better engine. And those income turns are going to involve taking one of your tapestry cards, hence the name of this game, playing it down to your board to whichever phase you're up to, taking the various benefits of that tapestry card, as well as taking a variety of other benefits depending on what you've unlocked on your player board, because on each of these tracks, you're going to slowly be taking these various huts from your player board and putting them onto your sideboard for additional benefits, whole bunch of intermingling things here, which means when you take a income turn, you're going to get more and more benefits, more and more points, more and more everything, the more huts you've unlocked. And so the game starts with an income turn, and then a few turns later, you play a few rounds, then you take another income turn, but now you get more because you've built more. And then a few more turns later, maybe 5, 6, 7 turns later, you take another income turn, and then another income turn, 5 times, with each of the gaps between those income turns growing progressively larger because your engine is more developed, because you're able to do more. This is going to be not that dissimilar to Everdell or even Wingspan by Stonemaier Games as well, where that aspect of your rounds get progressively more powerful as you build up your engine. There's going to be a few other things to be generally aware of. There's that main board over here, which, like I said already, you're going to be exploring and conquering, getting points along the way for placing down different tiles and matching up the territories, trying to get to the middle, which is going to be one of the few achievements. There are a few achievements you can earn during the game, from getting to the end of a track, from toppling your opponent's outpost, being a little bit of a warmongerer, to getting to that center island. And the first 2 players there will get points, other players will not. There's going to be the technology cards, which are going to give you these technologies that you can take them and you can add them to your board, and then you can slowly upgrade them. You could research those technologies. So you get clocks, but then you actually have to research them and move it up a level, which will give you varying bonuses, both points as well as other in-game benefits. There's going to be the little Tetris-y mini-game you have on the sideboard, which is going to be one of these things that we haven't really talked about, but where you can unlock all these various monuments and different things that you can add to your sideboard. And that sideboard is going to be this little board over here, and those little red dots you do not have to cover. The rest of it, as you cover, you will both earn in-game resources as well as points whenever you take an income turn. And so you're going to be filling up that board both with those monuments that you'll be unlocking. We'll explain how you get them shortly, as well as by taking your various buildings, your huts from your board, and putting them out into different spots. And those monuments are going to come from 2 primary areas, either from the technology cards themselves. Many of the technology cards will give you those monuments. Additionally, when you move into different sections of these 4 tracks around the board, it's going to unlock monuments that you can then take and put into your area there. So you're playing a little Tetris minigame, both for resources and for points. That's going to be the primary stuff going on with Tapestry. There's a few other edge cases or whatnot, but that's primarily the game. Go along a track, spend resources, go along another track, take an income turn to maximize what you've done until that point, rinse and repeat 5 times throughout the game, and see who has the most points. As far as what I like about Tapestry, the game is pretty simple and easy to get started with. Like I said already, it's a bit of an abstracted Civ game, so it has those 4X's to a degree, but really abstracted, really dialed down. It's going to give you a maximization game where you build up a tableau, get it progressively stronger, and go through the game that way. So it's pretty easy to get people up and running. The intermingling tracks are very rewarding to go through. Both the actual interplay between each track, as well as getting to the end of each track, is a lot of fun. The tracks start off pretty simple, but once you start getting to the end, you get these more powerful abilities and you have to pay more to get there. The resource cost to advance along the tracks gets progressively more expensive. That cost is effectively the timer that is going to cause you to forcefully go into income to get more resources to reset the round and continue. But getting to the end of those tracks, which will seem very hard at first, but as the game progresses ultimately will happen, it's very rewarding to sit there and get different things, whether it's the space tiles, whether it's the whole bunch of technology cards, and then ramping up and getting points for all the technology cards. Each of the tracks will have different things. Getting to the end of the science track will allow you to roll this die 4 times, advancing along different tracks, which is really just a ton of fun. So all the tracks in this game are a lot of fun. The tapestry cards as well. Tapestry cards as well, you're going to be unlocking them throughout the game. As you progress along these tracks, you're going to get into tapestry cards, as well as whenever you take an income turn, you'll get tapestry cards as well. And then having a hand of 3 or 4 tapestry cards, and then picking the one that's going to best suit your strategy, because these can have surprisingly big impacts on the game. They will guide your strategy, hopefully playing off things you've done well already, alternatively giving you areas to focus on as you continue to try to play out the game, both to suit your civilization strength as well as the tapestry cards. And speaking of which, speaking of those civilizations, those races, you're going to have unique races in the game that you'll be assigned at the beginning of the game, 2 races to pick from. You'll pick one that suits your strategy. Throughout the course of the game, it's possible to unlock other races as well, giving you more abilities, more things to focus on as the game progresses. But the combination of the tapestry cards and those races are going to give you a different puzzle to play with every single time you play the game, because you have to optimize your play. You have to optimize how you're going to try to win this game around both the tapestry cards, those powers, the individual race powers, your little board and Tetris-y feel of what's going on here, the actual game state of who's doing well on what track, because, I mean, those monuments can be so impactful that somebody else being ahead of you on a track is enough of a reason to focus on another track, and all those aspects combine to trying to figure out how do you win? How do I win this game given the constraints that are all on the table? As far as what I didn't like about the game, Tapestry is going to have a few things that weren't quite as rewarding for me. The first of all is I really do not like these science cards. These technology cards that you get in the game, I mean, I'm used to technology, the technology, whatever it is, the X of technology that is in games. I love discovering new things. I love unlocking new abilities, new traits, new unique ways that my civilization is more powerful than yours. And the technology and cards in Tapestry just feel not that rewarding. Sure, they give you stuff, but maybe it's just my own bias towards technology in games. But I want technology to not just give me stuff, I want it to give me stuff. I want to sit there and be like, well, now I can attack you with this, or now I can spend this and do that in ways that are supremely impactful. And ultimately, many of these technology cards will be like, get a resource, take 4 points. They're things, they matter, don't get me wrong, they're definitely impactful to the game, but they don't feel particularly rewarding, and so they're just there. I didn't really enjoy the technology card aspect of the game. You can't ignore it as a part of the game. It's just not the technology that I'm kind of looking for it. The variability of the Tapestry cards is going to be all over the place. See, something you don't necessarily know about Tapestry, but when the game first came out, it very much had, I shouldn't say very much, I would say there was certainly an outcry about balance issues, about different playtesting and different degrees, which races were more powerful and which tapestry cards were more powerful. And then in subsequent editions of the game, they balanced the race aspect by giving different races different starting points. So, you know, you might have a race that was more powerful, but hey, now they start with 15 fewer points than other races, and so it balances out. And I think that ultimately does work for the most part. You'll still have people not so thrilled about that, but I think that overall works. But the tapestry cards, later in the game, it matters less, because later in the game, ideally, you have built up an engine and gotten your hands on more and more cards. When you have a hand of 4 cards, one of them, at least one of them, should suit the strategy you're trying to go for. But especially early game, those first 2 income rounds, maybe even the first 3, depending if you've gotten to that point yet, you may just not have had the opportunity to draw as many cards, or more importantly, you may have a perfect one in your hand, that meaning you don't have to spend time and energy drawing more cards when other people do. The variability of how all over the place the strength and situational beneficialness is a word of these tapestry cards is going to make them slightly frustrating at times and incredibly cool at others. And it's just a large degree of variability when you're playing a multiplayer game. And then the third thing for me is going to be that Every time I play this game, every single time I've played the game, I spend the first half of the game feeling like I'm never going to get enough done in the game. And you very much do. By the time you get to the end of the game, going through those income rounds, you get progressively more powerful, you do more and more and more, and yet every single time I play, the first half of the game is spent just feeling constricted, feeling like I can't get things done. And sure, you'll power through it and you'll get to an end point where you actually are achieving everything you need, but just, I don't like that feeling of just struggling to make every single resource count and feeling like I'll never get to the end of any track, feeling like I'll never actually fill up my board. It feels like I'm playing this game for 2 hours and it's really the last half hour where I feel powerful and the first 90 minutes or so that I feel constrained. As far as what I can see other people not liking about this game, the variability of the races, which I touched upon already. For myself, the balance issues that they had, adding points to the races, works for me. I'm fine with that. It does the job. The point of the races is you don't really want to sit there in a game feeling like you just got dealt a weaker hand. And so the points ultimately for me are a fine balancing thing, but other players may well sit there and still feel, sure, I got 15 points, but look what you can do, look what I can do. They might still feel it's unfair, and so I can see that being a problem for others. The Tetris minigame, it might be a little bit of a weird thing in this game. Now, keep in mind as I say that, Feast for Odin is an incredibly popular game and has its own Tetris minigame that might feel out of place, but the Tetris minigame to me feels a little bit out of place. Doesn't actually bother me in the game, it works, it does the job, but it might just feel like a weird tangent to what's going on in the game. The combat in this game can very much be frustrating. I'd say more than the combat. The Civ aspect of this game, the 4XX aspect of this game is very much abstracted. If you are someone who walked into Tapestry expecting an actual developed 4X game where you can run around and have a Civ game and do these things and build up your civilization and have fascinating technologies, if you walked in expecting that, this might be a disappointment for you because it's really just, advancing along tracks with the occasional aspect of semi-combat-ish in the middle. And speaking of last things people might not like, there's going to be an aspect in this game of ambush cards. Some of these Tapestry cards you'll get throughout the game are going to give you something called ambushes, which are these cards you can play to prevent somebody else attacking you, which if you attack someone who happens to have an ambush card versus attacking someone who doesn't, it can just feel slightly annoying to actually go through that process. So all those things just might make the Civ aspect, the combat aspect of this game, not something people will like. As far as my final thoughts, before I go into my final thoughts, let me talk about the solo aspect of this game, because I have played this game solo 4 or 5 times now, and the solo aspect of this game, I actually prefer Tapestry as a solo game. While many of the aspects of the game that I didn't love, the length, the sitting there going through the whole thing, the unbalanced races, the imbalanced Tapestry cards, while many of those things are better since they put out a second edition and accommodated for those factors, I still prefer the solo game. The solo game I can rush through pretty quickly because people might just sit there, be looking at the board, trying to figure out what's the optimal way to min-max through those first 90 minutes while you make everything count. And in the solo game, you're the only one doing that. You don't have to wait for others to do that. Additionally, when you're dealt a bad hand of cards or a race or whatnot, it completely feels like a puzzle. A puzzle you'll either win or lose, and that's fine. It is what it is. Versus when you have other players at the table, it doesn't feel so binary of win or lose. It feels like you won, but you won because you got dealt a better hand of Tapestry cards and a better race, and it all played off each other better, and it's just a little bit less satisfying playing with other players compared to playing it solo. That said, and this is where we'll drift into my final thoughts, both as a competitive game and as a solo game, while I do enjoy ultimately pros and cons aside, I do enjoy the game here. I do enjoy Tapestry. I enjoy the intermingling tracks. I enjoy the solo experience. I don't think I enjoy this one enough to keep it in my collection. It's one that every time I play it, I find myself enjoying the game. It's fun. It's good, but the critiques I gave, the aspects of the game that I don't like, that don't feel as rewarding as I would ideally like, make it a game that I just find myself eventually pulling something else. I find myself, as a solo experience, I'd rather play Spirit Island or Terraforming Mars. Vastly different games, to be sure, but filling that same roughly hour and a half time slot for a solo game. And as a competitive game, again, those balances just are a little bit too frustrating to really feel like I played against other players and won. It feels like we're both playing multiplayer solo and you got dealt a better hand, which just isn't that fun. Ultimately, Tapestry is a game that may well be for you. It's a game that has enough intermingling, enough power, enough things playing off each other, enough of a puzzle to manage that there is a rewarding aspect to playing this game, depending on how strongly you feel about those cons or not. For myself, I give Tapestry a 7 out of 10. Solid game, happy to play it, but for myself, not one I feel the need to keep in my collection any longer. Until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you enjoyed this review, and as always, have a good one.